Let's dive now to the remarkable Erica Pratt story. A girl who's being called a hero against all odds. This 7-year-old Philadelphia girl managed to escape her abductors. The smiling, waving Pratt home with her family right now after her 24-hour kidnapping and ransom ordeal. The determined girl had to chew through duct tape and break through a window to escape. 2 young boys in the neighborhood heard her cries through the window and came to her aid.
We were standing over there across the street, and I heard her screaming for help. And then we went over there to go see what happened. And then she was inside the mailbox, and we asked her name and age, and she said her name was Erica. Then she said she was 7. So then I said, "Is there a chair in there or something?" She said, "No." Then she showed me a rubber hammer, though. And she busted the first window. I busted the other one and ripped the screen out and helped her get out the house.
So how'd you help her get out? Did you pull her out, or what'd you do?
Picked her up.
And pulled her out?
Yep.
What?
It's an amazing story. We want to go to Philadelphia now, where MSNBC's Brooke Hart is following the reunion and the ongoing investigation. Brooke, good day to you. I know the family came out and talked a while ago, and we saw Erica. Did she say anything?
Erica didn't say anything, Lester, but we did hear from her uncle. We saw Erica for the first time, however, today. She came out in the arms of a family member. Her uncle, though, spoke. He wanted to thank the neighbors for their support and prayers while Erica was gone for about 22 hours. Her family, though, really credited Erica with having enough courage to free herself and get herself home. A spokesman for the family said this little heroine saved herself by chewing through that duct tape that the kidnappers used to bind her arms and legs and to cover over her face. She chewed through the duct tape, and then she wandered around the house where she was left about 10 miles away from here, and then called for help, as we heard. As for how she's doing today, she's playing on the porch now behind me, but behind some bushes. Her uncle said that she was mostly spending the day playing, painting, and enjoying being with the family. The family overjoyed, of course, that she's home. Lester.
Brooke, the police have said it's likely the abductors knew the Pratt family. Are the Pratt family members commenting about this at all?
Right. The police say, though, that Erica did not know her kidnappers. One thing that police are looking into is this rumor in the neighborhood that the Pratt family received a life insurance payment earlier this year for the death of a family member, Erica's uncle, who was murdered earlier this year. Erica's family today didn't have anything to say about that, to confirm or deny that rumor. They, of course, don't want it to get out whether they received that money, especially since police suspect that might have been the motivation of Erica's kidnappers. Lester.
Brooke Hart in Philadelphia. Brooke, thanks very much for the update. In Erica Pratt's case, police say it's likely the abductors, as we mentioned, knew the family. It's a theory that shouldn't surprise authorities. In a majority of U.S. kidnapping cases, the abductor knows his or her victim. In fact, a U.S. Department of Justice study shows in most instances it's a parental or custodial kidnapping. Let's bring in a man who has helped track down more than 500 missing kids. Private investigator Scott Bernstein. He's the Chief Operating Officer for Child Recovery International. Scott, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Before we talk about custodial kidnappings, let's talk about this case where someone who the family knows takes the child. Is it generally some sexual motivation or something else?
No, I think it's financially driven anytime you have a family member involved, or it has to do with the custodial rights. You're going to find that during a heated divorce or something, when it comes down to the using the children as a pawn, so to speak, one or the other parent are going to fight for the custody of the kid, and if they can't win in a legal battle, they're going to take it elsewhere.
But of course, in this case, we're talking about it may have been someone who simply knew the family but not related to the family. Is that very common?
Yeah, well, it's common, because the first thing they're going to do, any kind of law enforcement authority, is going to look at the family first, because more than half of any kind of kidnappings are family-oriented. And in this regard, it's going to be parental-oriented in some regards, or it has to do with somebody else from the family. Now, this girl obviously knew who her captors were because they called her by her first name to lure her or to bait her, so to speak. It wasn't done by somebody strange to her. In the case of Samantha Runyon, where she was lured in the puppy dog, pretext. Come help me find my puppy dog. So,
this case unusual on a lot of levels, of course, the ransom. But let's talk now about the more typical case, the custodial type kidnapping. You say it's generally not some sexual connection. Therefore, there must be the belief the child's not in imminent danger. Does that affect the resources and time that law enforcement would put on those kind of cases?
Actually, it would seem to be the opposite, because right off the bat, they're going to be looking at the family in the first 48 hours. So they're going to concentrate on looking at the mother and the father, and then elsewhere in the elongated family unit. So right off the bat, they're going to bring people in. If people can't be accounted for, like in this case, if it was a cousin or something in that nature, the people are accounted for there's going to be a manhunt for those people.
Does time complicate complicate things in those sorts of cases where it may be a family member?
It's complicated only in the fact when you do not have a ransom demand. This is one of the unique times where now we have a ransom demand right off the bat. And that's what happens with kidnappings. If there is going to be a ransom demand, it's going to be made within 24 hours of the abduction. This happened pretty quickly. The girl was a very intelligent young girl, was able to get away on her own, but it's rare. But sometimes, anytime it involves ransom, you have time. It's not as time sensitive when there is not a ransom note.
Let's be honest. Most of the ransom stories we hear of, we read about it in novels and television and movie type shows. It's not very common, is it?
No, it's not very common. If you look at the history, and just in the last 4 years alone, most of the kidnappings we had, starting with the John Bonet case, which was, you know, a ransom demand. There was no ransom demand in that regard. I mean, that ransom letter was notoriously written by some assumption of, you know, a predator. But anyway, you also had another one came upon, I think it was in Elizabeth Smart case, where one came on an email. And that, you know, that's obviously somebody who's been watching the media, wants to get the salacious 15 minutes of fame, has nothing to do with the case. So you're not going to find that more of the prevailing cases, especially high profile in the media, they're done by pedophiles and the sexual predators. So it's a whole different beast you're looking at.
Scott Bernstein, thanks so much for coming on and talking about this with us.
Thank you.
Nice having you here. It is not a family member, but an apparent stranger who's behind bars in the kidnapping and murder of Samantha Runyon. Factory worker Alejandro Avila was charged with sexually assaulting and killing the 5-year-old California girl. And tonight, mourners will say goodbye. Conan Nolan of our affiliate KNBC has more now on the funeral set to take place just hours from now.